audience, and obviously
Here we go.
excited for this. Live the few.
All right. Good day. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another Live the Fuel show. So that's right. I'm back with a repeat guest co-host. And the fun of this is that this gentleman, I got to go back now. Wow. We aired him back on episode 71, May 1st, 2017. So we've actually physically met and then have stayed in touch virtually. This gentleman knows a little bit about diversity. And actually, I'm just going to go ahead and throw us right into his intro. We want to talk today about a new book titled Use Your Difference to Make a Difference, How to Connect and Communicate in a Cross-Cultural World. And you guys will get to know more about him because this is how we do it on this show. So without further ado, Teo Rockson, welcome back to the show, sir.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be on. It's so funny to think about how fast time flies. I remember, yeah, we were in that hotel, right? We were in a hotel.
That was outside of Philadelphia, like the north, that edge of New Jersey. I forget the town.
Yeah.
But that was my first MapCon, I think.
Yeah. How many have you been since then?
I don't know. I speak at them now. So I stepped into your shoes.
No, you took your shoes and you filled them out. You've done a lot of incredible things since then. I remember we had a conversation. We were talking about, my favorite Denzel movie. I'd given a call, and then we just used to sit down and just talk in the lobby, where they were ordering food, and you tell me about your adventure.
Why is that so complicated for some people? Let's just pause on that one little theme. Like what you just promoted kind of blows people's minds sometimes. Like they're like, wait a minute, you just like meet people and then you just sit down and have conversations. I'm like, yeah, that's what normal human beings should be able to do. I mean, maybe I'm stretching it too far with the word normal. I don't know, man. You're big in the public speaking market. You're now an author. What are your thoughts on that little subject?
I think naturally humans are primed to connect, right? I think we're social beings. I know there are studies that are doing that, and I saw those studies as I was writing the book. So the concept of meeting people, though, that are strangers, I don't know if that's something that's conditioned. Sometimes you have people that feel intimidated. They feel like they might not be met with the same reaction. They might feel like they don't have anything worthy to say, or sometimes it's just they don't want to talk to the other person. And it's a lot of that. But for people like you and me, we're naturally energetic. And so we might be on the other end of the spectrum for that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know why it's weird, but I think it's a combination of reasons for sure.
I joke around with people because they're like, why is it that you do what you do? Right. And I was like, could you help me define that? Because I don't even know what you mean. Like, you ever have that pause where it's like, I don't really, I know what I do. Right? You know what you do.
Yes.
Sometimes it kind of catches you off guard. And because, again, rewind 3 years ago when I met you to fast forward to today. I mean, since you and I last talked, that's 2017, right? So solidified my relationship, got married earlier this year on St. Patrick's Day up in the Canadian Rockies on our heli skiing wedding, right?
Hey, congrats again.
Yeah, right? That's crazy. Like Scott said he would never get married. And
that was literally one of the conversations we had. I remember you saying, I'm never, I have a life partner and, she knows this. And I was like, okay, well, I guess you two are on the same page.
Yeah. and then sometimes they wear you down. Or it actually, something I've said many times on this show, because we don't edit and we don't care about our vernacular choices. I said, she was somebody who helped me pull the head out of my ass, which is still in there sometimes. She'll be happy to remind me of that. But like sometimes you just get so self-centered. Let's be honest. In my relationships, I'm such a driven person that I always put the relationship to the back burner. So like it's funny because I've now been on like a couple of relationship podcasts, and they're like, "You should write a book on romance." I'm like, "No, that's not a good idea at all."
So I'm curious, how does she feel when you say that? Because that's very big of you to admit that. You said you put the relationship in the back burner. Because I remember when we talked, that was one of the things you said. You just don't want to. You feel like marriage, would be like a distraction almost. It sounded like. And then so how does that? I always wonder about the other side. How is that received? when, you
It
know,
does not get received well if you say that. So anybody who's watching or listening to this, do not say that when you're in a dating process or relationship. If you want, unless you want to guarantee it to end, because part of the joke is that, you know, that's 2017. No, she probably already took me back because she broke up with me because I was not opening up. You know, my walls were still up from my firefighting days, and I just wasn't letting people still back in, and I didn't realize it. Right? I was telling people like you, like, we're just sitting in a hotel lobby, and we're talking about our profession and podcasting and being able to give back and connect with all these people, but yet I was still not willing, you know, to connect with somebody super close to me, you know, that was willing to open themselves up. So it was a big wake up call, conversation, growth. I mean, it kind of blew my brain wide open. I was like, wow, man, I'm still growing from it. Obviously, you know, putting a ring on it helps.
Yeah. You know, and that's an interesting concept because the book is about, so when we say the book is about how to connect and communicate in a cross-cultural world, I sometimes feel marriage and, you know, relationships between men and women, or, you know, any gender identity, that's a cross-cultural experience where you have your inner culture and then there's another inner culture. But with you had to go to a certain place. She had to go as well. I mean, you said there were some things that obviously she did. Maybe she thinks of herself, and you put the stuff in the back burner. And I do think that's a microcosm of the world today, essentially, where we are in this time that's defined by fear, ignorance, right? Regardless of how you feel. And a lot of those things that inform our fear or our ignorance are either our unwillingness to learn more of the other side, or things that we've believed that might not actually be true, you know, things we've heard or stereotypical things. And we've just been conditioned to believe that. And so it's interesting in hearing the progression from your relationship, because you did something you never thought you could do.
Yeah.
And whether you talk about races that changed or white supremacists or things like that, it's another thing. They just learn how to humanize the other person or understand the other side, or whether it's Republican versus Democrat or Democrat versus Republican. And I think that core concept of learning how to build relationships, whether it's virtually or on or physically, is the key to saving our world.
Well,
essentially.
I agree with you, obviously. And I think something that I rewind about 1 minute in your conversation here, maybe 45 seconds, the key word you threw out, the stuck in my head I had to bring up here, was the conditioning, or the conditioning process.
Right.
And I allowed myself to, I think I might have self-conditioned myself those years ago when I was firefighting years ago. And my tagline was, I used to tell people, like, you know what, dude, you know, this is already one of the most dangerous jobs in the world. You know, fighting wildfires, you know, it's like hiking in the mountains. I was like, and I'm watching my fellow, you know, brothers on the crew worrying about, you know, what is their wife doing? What is their girlfriend doing? You know, is the mother of their child, you know, soon to be born child, going to be okay while they're on a fire? Like, I was like, I just did not allow those pieces to come into my life those 2 years because I didn't want the distraction. So that's how I justified it. But what I didn't realize was I was actually, since I stayed unplugged from that for those 2 years, I conditioned myself away from that.
Yeah.
Those walls did get solidified. Right. And I was like, wow, man, I didn't realize I had to blow those. I spent the past few years breaking them back down.
I love
that was my own fault.
I love that so much. It's okay. So this is what I believe the bedrock of connection is. And it's essentially what I wrote on. I think it's 3 principal factors. I say educate, don't perpetuate, instead communicate. All right, and I'll break it down. And so the education piece it's broken down into 2 parts. It's self-education and education of environment. I believe that if we want to ever connect with someone, we have to first start off with ourselves. We need to know what our biases are, our triggers are, and what our values are. And so everyone has biases. Everyone has, it's what protects us. It's also what basically it's what informs us about how we see other people. It can be good. It can be bad. It doesn't make you necessarily racist or any of that, or sexist or misogynist. But if you don't understand how your biases can lead to some prejudices or stereotypes, you don't know where there's room for growth. You know, you can walk in on the street and maybe there's a homeless person and you find yourself crossing the street, or someone, and then you wonder why you keep doing that. What is the reason? Do you feel like, you know, what is the reason? We have to investigate those biases. But if we don't start off being honest with ourselves on those things, we have a problem, because then we start to think there's nothing wrong with me, and we miss out on that growth. And it also affects how we connect with other people. And then after you investigate your biases and create the room for improvement and make sure you find ways to normalize and humanize people, it's about understanding what your triggers are. I mean, there's certain things that if I'm in a room, if I hear someone, I can fly off the handle. You know, someone said, for me, I think for me, when people try to make me feel like I'm not, you know, enough, or something about me is not worthy or something, for some reason it's triggered for me, because a lot of my life, I grew up in 5 countries, 4 continents. And a lot of times I used to have the identity crisis, and I didn't feel like, so when I feel someone's condescending or something, I notice that my inner body gets that. And so what are those moments where you're triggered positively or negatively? Knowing that can actually help with your connection, because it can inform you with how you tell, hey, look, this is just not a situation or a good environment for me. I noticed that I do this. And then your other partner or anyone you're talking to can say, oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't mindful of that.
Yeah, I remember you and I chatting about that too. I think either sitting in the lobby or on that last podcast back in 2017. And for our newer listeners, again, real quick, let's pause. You said you moved around from continents, countries. Could you help other people understand why? Like, just so they understand it, because there's newer listeners like, wait a minute, what? Why? Yeah. That sounds cool. I mean,
so I'm for those listening. If you didn't listen to the first episode, I'm Nigerian, and I grew up in 5 countries and 4 continents, as well as 2 dictatorships, right? And a lot of that was because of my dad's job as a diplomat. As a diplomat, you get posted out of the country a lot. And so you spend 3 to 4 years in one country, and you come back to your home country, do the same, then go back. And so we were always moving. It was Sweden, Vietnam, Burkina Faso, United States, and Nigeria for me as my formative years. And so in those moments, your identity becomes fluid, and you can become conditioned, or you can think less of yourself if you let the society decide it, right? There were many moments when I thought I wasn't Black enough, or man enough, or Nigerian enough, based on certain things. Like, why don't you do this? This is not how we do things. And so you have to learn how to find a confidence of self. And so when, as I was going through that process and understanding my triggers, it really allowed me to really develop this level of self-awareness. If you want to connect, you have to be self-aware. So that biases, triggers, and then your values. You have a lot of values. I know you, from everything that I've known about you, there's certain things that you believe. But many people and companies don't live out their values, actually. You can catch them. You stop anyone on the road. Hey, I believe in honesty and integrity. And I always ask them, okay, so are you always honest with everyone? Or I believe in love and all that. Do you love everyone like in a different? No, I only love this type of people. And when you don't actually live out your values as a company or as an institution, you get in trouble. Enron, all these people. When you don't live out your values, you become less of who you say you are, farther from that version. And that becomes a disconnect tool. And then it leads to the don't perpetuate. That's basically how you work against systemic oppressions or systemic things. How do you perpetuate certain stories? If you're a storyteller, for example, like you, are you telling stories that marginalize people and make people see the world a certain way? If you're in the news, are you only saying this to promote people in a different way? If you are in the workplace, are you saying that you don't hire people from a certain tribe because their name is not English? There's so many things. Or are you making identity jokes on people's based on people's identity? And then we have the fake news aspect of the world. We have we live in a world of deep fakes. We live in a world. I don't know if you ever watched The Great Hack. It's a documentary on the Netflix, but it talks about how data.
I just added that to my list because we've been on a bit of because I just helped launch a documentary, so we've been on a big movie thing.
You're gonna love this. You're gonna love this and be blown away. But that is talking about conditioning. A lot of us have echo chambers where we just receive information that confirms our beliefs, and all those things affect how we see the world. And then it comes down to history. A lot of the history, Black history, for example, here is often taught from slavery. I'm Nigerian, and I know history before that, and I'm like, wait, we know more. But all this things shape how we see the world and all that. And then the last aspect of the framework of connection is instead communicate. We just need to learn how to communicate with people that don't have the same values as us. That's the thing.
I got to rewind again because you dropped some great key words throughout all this, but the one that stood out to me again, as we're hanging, is the self-awareness piece.
Yes.
That to tie this full circle was one of the reasons why, again, I think I needed to pull my head out of my butt. Like, I needed somebody like her to give me the wake-up call, but then I still had to take the responsibility to become more self-aware, to put in the work. I've talked about this before on random past shows. And it's funny because I'm actually going to be talking where we met at MapCon next week. And my topic is, I'm actually, because I don't believe in speaking about the same thing over and over again, like keep it fresh, so I'm actually going to target transparency, and the power and the freedom that it can provide you if you just be who you are and put it all out there, because then it's no holds barred. And I'm going to talk about how that podcasting helped me do that, you've been doing this for 5 years. I'm doing it for 3 years. Like, you put enough reps in, things get a little bit easier. It's just like going to the gym, man. So, but the point here on the self-awareness piece was that I had to take that accountability. I had to take that personal accountability. Say, great, Scott, you claim to be this self-development dude, always studying, right? Crushing podcasts, crushing audiobooks, blah, blah, blah. And then when she broke up with me, I realized, wait a minute, I've done all this professionally and health and fitness and everything. And but I didn't do it with my heart. So I needed to take the time, pause, and over those next 2-3 months while we were broken up, put in that self-work, figure that out, become more self-aware. And I've had numerous people, and this is not a pat on my back. I want to reflect on people who have helped me along the way. They were like, dude, do you know how rare that is? And the sad part of that statement is that they had to use the word rare. And I think this ties back to you and your book. And I wanted to bring that up to help this conversation, because it's like, dude, that wasn't easy for me. I had to take that. That's a big step. So many people, and this goes for diet, exercise, going back to school, basically choosing to commit to grow yourself personally, professionally, and otherwise. And that's what I'm thinking of right now when you're hitting on all this stuff, because so many people just do the blame game thing because of their conditioning.
Absolutely. Right? No, you're spot on. Self-awareness is the number one. I mean, when you think about cross-cultural communications, the idea of being self-aware means you're going to come to terms with the fact that you could be racist. And being racist doesn't mean you're a bad person, by the way. You've said racist things. You've said sexist things. We've all had all those moments. Yeah. But that idea of actually being someone who has done something that is reviled is something that we can't, for some reason, reconcile with. And self-awareness doesn't take that into account. It just says, look, I have been part of the problem. I have participated in a bad narrative, but the best thing to do, like you said, is to actually take that step and say, me knowing that I've done this gives me a certain level of influence and power to say that I can now change the narrative. And not many people are willing to go there because we're stuck on, I'm a good person and I don't have to change, it's you. And it's so interesting. And I, that's why I'm passionate about diversity and inclusion. I do feel like we do need to get our heads out of our butts, but we also need to understand that with digital media and with all these places where we're in schools, we're parents, and we're in workplaces, if you want to be leaders and train people, how do we not create safe spaces for people to be themselves? Mm-hmm. We can't all of a sudden create environments where everybody thinks the way we think. I mean, we might feel strongly about how we feel, but this is a world of 7.5 billion people. In what level of arrogance do you have to basically say you want to have an echo chamber? There's a lot of benefit that can come from having competing thoughts, but we shouldn't be threatened because someone is different. Use your difference to make a difference, is what I say.
No, that's true. There's many people who are afraid to even get into a healthy debate anymore because, and I choose the word healthy because it's okay if you have a different opinion. That's beautiful. But have a healthy debate about it. Don't go off the reservation, freak out, like all these different terms that are out there. It's like, guys, just have a discussion. Like you and I sitting down in a lobby of a hotel. We don't know what we're about to talk about. We may bring up subjects that we don't both agree on.
Yeah. We didn't agree on the marriage thing.
There you go.
We talked about that. And you're right. There's I say this all the time. In a world of nuance, we're governed by binary systems, right? Mm-hmm. So it's either this or that. And so what that happens is people are either seen as trolls or politically correct, right? And
always politically correct.
Yeah, you're too BC or you're just a troll. And then we forget it. But most of the world is in the middle. And sometimes people will be like, well, I don't want to say anything because that's going to happen. You're going to say I'm this, or you're going to think of me as that. And the other side is like, well, you should know that this is going to, and we need to be able to release our ego in some level and open the dialogue.
Ego. Oh man. Got to pause on that. Wow. Especially, this isn't just, I will say, hold on, help me with this one.
Yes.
Ego, man, we got to pause on that because this comes into play on all of us. We're all guilty of it. To this day, I have to do the thing like you. We have to catch it, all right? When you're a driven personality, driven to succeed, driven to help others succeed, I think we all still fall back into that. And I don't know if it's a male female thing, but sometimes I feel like us guys are more guilty of the ego. But I know some very professional, successful ladies that have that. And again, people can correct me if I'm wrong. I consider it a masculine trait, but it can also be a feminine trait. But I think all of us, if you're that passionate about something, ego does come into play. I think it's inevitable.
Yeah, ego is in there, but at this thing, then how do you manage? How do you manage it, and how do you make sure it's not getting in the way of connection? Because there's a healthy amount of ego that exists for sure. But then, what if the ego comes in and we have a conversation? And you're like, nope, I've already said this person is wrong. I don't like this person based on this beliefs. I don't even know this person, but I'm just going to continue to do this, and I'm not going to let the person talk. I'm going to make sure all my points are, and I'm going to make sure I embarrass this person in public. And then you're like, oh, is that about your ego, or are you trying to have the conversation? You're trying to prove to the world that you are someone that's so educated and so this that you forget the other side. That's what I'm referring to. And then there's the ego of like, I'm the best. I believe I can do it. I'm dreaming. That's different. But we have to manage that emotion. It's an interesting place.
So do you get into that in the book? I mean, again, I'm going to do some screen sharing again, but do you get is there a chapter on like catching yourself?
yeah, I do. And a lot of the parts in the last section, which is about instant communicating, is about opening dialogue. I talk about improv artists, for example. There's this thing called, a lot of improvs, comedians, actors, they get into this. It's basically whatever scenario is given to you, you accept it and you build on it. You can't negate it. You can't belittle it. You just accept on it. And they'll throw out scenarios. And that concept of yes and instead of no but is so beautiful in the sense that if you're forced to be in that scenario where no matter what's being said, you have to build on that allows you to understand the other side. You're like, okay, that's what you said. Let's go to the next side. And I think that ability to open dialogue is very interesting. And I also talk about how architects work. And bear with me here. So an architect basically meets a client. The client gives the architect their projections. These are my goals. This is what I want. Okay. And then the architect then has to do research to see if what he wants or she wants is viable. He has to check with the mayor, the codes, he has to see if the building is too high, it's going to affect flights, it's going to affect birds, environmental, if it's going to affect the neighbor. Thank you for ordering. If it's going
to, I'm doing this live on the air, brother.
Yeah. If it's going to affect the neighboring thing. And then based on that, he or she goes back to the client and say, okay, so this is the research I did. This is what we don't do. We don't do research. We just go off and based on this is what can actually happen. And then I say, okay, I agree with that. That architect then has to go to the contractors and say, okay, can you do this? Is this what's happening? These are the timeline. And then the architect's the constant back and forth in between. Client wants this. Contractor says this. This is the timeline. That's the way of the conversation. It's you take information, research, build, adjust, come back, move, adjust, say, stay. I mean, it's the same way, but that's what they do. You have to be a big picture thinker, a macro and a micro thinker in the same way, because things change, and do you change or do you stay rigid?
Well, I don't care how many coaches you get in life. I truly believe, by the way, if you are working with coaches throughout your career or your professional or just your personal life, keep looking to level them up after a little while. It's good to freshen things up. But I also tell people all the time, if you have a great coach, make sure they have a great coach to keep leveling them up and holding them accountable. But anyway, coaches I've worked with over the years, the most common thing that I used to teach my employees in the corporate space years ago was like, guys, if you want to succeed, life, business, career, whatever, you have to learn to embrace change. So that's why I wanted to hit on real quick, because you brought up change, and that's that ebb and flow. And you have to be willing to at least pause and consider what change can bring. If you just bring the wall up right away and say, nope, professionally, that never would have allowed me to grow my career, right? I never would have left the corporate world and even tried being a wildland firefighter, right? Like all these things that I have helped me build where I am today and lit the fuel and everything else. These all things happen for a reason, but one of the biggest underlying principles, people are like, how do you do all the crazy adrenaline junkie sports and everything else? I'm like, because I've just gotten better at embracing change, embracing the challenges that come. Not everybody's at that place in the timeline, though. So I think that's important. I'm sure your book helps with that too. Maybe you can dig into that. But it's like, that's something that's come up over the past, you'll appreciate this. You've been podcasting over 5 years. over the past probably year and a half, the first year and a half, all of a sudden I started seeing one key word come to the surface on this show. We discuss health, business, and lifestyle, but mindset always end up coming up above that. I love hammering on mindset. And then the past year and a half, a tagline started developing, and I said, we are all just at a different place on the timeline. Again, this ties back to your diet, where you're at in your exercise program, where you're at in your love life, whether you're at in your career, your business as an entrepreneur, a public speaker, an author, whatever. But I think that's important to help people understand too, is that, you know, you and I are talking like we know what we're talking about, but it's like, guys, like, it's okay. We're just a little bit played down a bit. You might be starting off earlier on. Yeah. So how do you help people understand that?
Well, I think the point you hit on the most to help people understand that is that there isn't an end destination to growth, you know. Especially when it's all about growth mindset and fixed mindset. And that's it's a passage I say in the book. We all need to understand that this is all about growth mindsets. There are things that will change. And if we are so fixed on our way being the only way, it becomes a problem. But when you have a growth mindset, you're naturally more curious. And when you're curious, you start to explore that. And as you explore that, you find, oh, that's a different way. Oh, that's another way. And you're constantly there. But if you feel like you know everything, that's the mindset that we need to go against, then you're not going to grow. And so if you commit, you know, I meditate, I try to meditate as regularly as I can, and I say affirmations and things like that. When I'm starting my day, I'm saying things like, you know, I'm open to new experiences, you know, or I want this to happen. And I'm setting a goal that I believe that I have to grow into the person to achieve it. You know, before this book came, this would be a good example. 2018, I said I want to write a book in 2019. Didn't know how I was going to do it. I didn't have any publication or, you know, connect to anyone. And I just said, I just know that I want to do it in 2019. And people were like, well, how are you going to do it? Do you have any connections? I was like, I don't know. I'm going to write a book and I want it to be a published author. I wanted to be a traditional publisher. And so what I had to do was learn how to grow. And I was like, okay, I don't know what's in my network, but let me see if I can get connected to any editors in the platform. And then they're like, okay, I know an editor in Houghton, in McGraw-Hill. We talked, then it went radio silent. Then I went to LinkedIn, found some people. They also went radio silent. And then I thought to myself around October, I am a podcaster. Publicists reach out to me all the time with their authors. Why don't I just ask one of my guests if they have publishers, you know, that they could introduce me to? And then one of them did. And then, you know, the funny thing that happened was she said I was too small for her, small for the publisher. This was going from me being big, me being too small for
that's good. It's all good for us to get a little wake up call once in a while.
Exactly. And then, she said I was too big for her rather. The first time in the year. Yeah, in the first year. Sorry, in the first part of the year, as people were saying I was too small. And then she said I was too big for her. But then the amazing thing that she did was, I'm going to introduce you to a company I used to work for called Wiley. And that was all tenacity. But the thing that I was doing, I was still writing a book in the process as if I got the book deal. And so when I got the book deal in December, they said, okay, well, if you wanted to do this in the fall, you need to send me this book by March 1st. And then I was
deadlines.
Like, yeah. And I was like, you know what? Sure. And then I sent the book February 28th. And then and everybody was, how did you write this? How did you do this? I said, I was prepared and I was constantly learning and growing. And here it is on September 4th. So you have to employ a growth mindset. If you're going to do a cross-cultural communication, you have to understand that you're not going to have all the answers. You're going to make mistakes. You might say something that's offensive. You might say something that someone doesn't like, but are you willing to humble yourself, apologize, and move on? Are you willing to know your place and understand that you might not always be the one that needs to say something?
That's a good point for your book content. Like, honestly, the book, you put it out there. I think a lot of people are held back from putting out a book because they're afraid to rub people the wrong way.
Yes.
And I think an underlying theme here, I think that you've very well hit on, I think we could put into words, is that many of us are afraid to rub people the wrong way.
Yes.
It's like, guys, whatever the population number was you threw out there in this world, you're
7.5 billion.
You're never going to make everybody happy. The sooner you learn that in life, and the sooner you start taking a position on things, and again, not in an aggressive and obnoxious way. I mean, just like take a position. Okay. I don't agree with you here. Cool. At least we know.
Yeah.
But because like, even though, so now your book's out, there might be people who read this book and we're either going to agree or they're going to disagree.
Exactly.
But if you never put the book out there, you won't know.
Yeah, but you also know the consequence of not doing that. What happens is when those parents don't have the dialogue because they want to be seen as good people, and they have that internal thought where they haven't worked through their biases or any of those things, what happens is their kids observe them, right? And the kids see, or anyone in their circle of influence see that, and they go into their circle of influence just adopting things that they, unconsciously, that they picked up from their parents. And then the parents say, whoa, how did this guy say the N-word? I've never, ever said, we don't say it out. And I'm like, how do you think this happened? And it's those type of things. And it's, if you don't have the, what Brene Brown says, if you don't have the ability to choose courage, over comfort, we're going to be in a tricky place where, we're not saying what we mean because we don't want to offend someone, and we're missing out on an opportunity for growth. And that's why I love what you do. I mean, I know I'm sure we don't agree on the same sports teams. I'm sure we don't agree on all the values, but we are always ready to engage in terms of dialogue. And at the end of the day, we stay respectful to each other.
Well, I mean, nowadays, and obviously this is a big part of what you do, like, hey, guess what? Teo and I are on the opposite spectrums of the color spectrum. Okay, right? Oh my God. We're sitting down and having conversations. Oh my God. The sad part is that we're approaching 2020, and that's still weird for some people.
It's still weird for some people. Absolutely is. I've had conversations with people who, who always said, and I brought many examples in the book. There was an old lady in Texas. I was at a wedding, and she said, I just want to congratulate you, for being one of the good black ones. You don't have any do-rag. You don't have any do-rag or earrings or corners. And I was like, what is happening? And then
did you have to catch your breath for a second? Like, okay.
I did. I couldn't, because I was the only black person in the wedding. Because it was a friend. And then two other things happened. A Drake song was playing. A lot of people were saying the N-word, like, yo. And then I was like, what? And then the pastor of that church, he found that I was Nigerian, and there's some people have stereotypes about Nigerians, and he said, oh, this prince. He just hit his credit card and said, oh, I guess I have to hide my credit card from you since you're Nigerian. And I'm like, all these things are happening in the same.
Did he actually say that?
Yes, he said, oh, I guess be careful of this guy. And he said, and I'm thinking, and obviously,
was he trying to make a joke?
He was definitely laughing when he said he was trying to make a joke.
Okay,
you can also tell that he was being that it was serious about that. But even regardless, the joke or serious, it's the whole thing. Say the N-word. Someone needs to congratulate me to tell me that I'm a good black guy.
Okay.
See, but that's the whole point. How do we have those conversations? It happens all the time.
You'll appreciate this. And this is not about me. This is about this guy. Last week, I stopped to get gas at a gas station. I'm like, came home from some meetings 2 hours from here out in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And this dude was at the gas pump trying to jumpstart his car. So I guess like he pulled in to get gas and his car died.
Oh, wow.
Black guy, looked at his clothes. I mean, whatever. I don't care. He looks like he worked for like a pool installation company, like to do all this high-end pools, which I found out he did. So I'm 2 pumps over, and I just finished pumping, and he just comes like jogging over. He's like, hey, man. He's like, excuse me, sir. He's like, is there any chance you can give me a quick jump? And I turned because I was like, well, when I pulled in, somebody was jumping him, then they're gone. So I guess they couldn't wait long enough to see if they can get the guy's car started, so they just left. So I was like, yeah, dude, I don't care, whatever. So I pull my car over. I try and jumpstart the guy's car, and he's got this big SUV. And the lady from the gas station comes out. She's got like 4 teeth. Not that it matters, but anyway, she's like, I don't want to be a bitch, but she's like, people are complaining that you're trying to jumpstart your car at the gas pump. First of all, there was only like one other person at the pump, and I was like, first of all, who? But it's like, second of all, I was like, okay. So the guy, I was like, not a problem. I was like, and his name was Franchet. That's right. Franchet. I mean, it was like, I gave him props. I was like, dude, my name is so boring. It's just Scott, whatever. Man. So I was like, dude, we'll just push your car over into the side parking spots. Let's finish getting this done. And he's like, oh, we can't do that. He's like, my car's too big. And I'm like, dude, I work out. Don't worry about it. Yeah. Just grab that wheel. And I was like, we got this. I was like, and I had to push him up over this concrete hump. And it actually was a struggle. I'm in dress shoes and a suit. I didn't give a crap.
Oh, wow.
So yeah. We tried jump starting it. Can't get the thing. Fast forward the story. And I was like, dude, how far away you live? He's like, oh, I live in downtown Allentown. That's where I live, Pennsylvania. So he's probably about 10, 15 minutes from my house. I'm like, I'm on my way home. I don't care about doing a detour. I'll just give you a lift home. I was like, I already disconnected my car. He couldn't even get his windows up. It was starting to rain. So I was like, get your jumper cables back out. I was like, clearly your battery's shot. I was like, so I had to rehook up my car to get him enough juice to get his windows up so it doesn't ruin the interior. I was like, let's take it back to your place. He didn't have a wallet on him or anything. And I was like, all right, dude, it's not a big deal. Don't worry. He's just like, I can't believe this. This is awesome. And I'm like, whatever, dude. Like he didn't bring up the color thing at all, but I drive him to downtown and he's got a rental apartment with a couple of roommates, whatever. And we talked the whole time. That's how I found out how he's, doing this job, everything else. He's looking to better himself. And one of my biggest clients is in the HVAC industry. And I just happened to bring that up in the car. And he's like, oh man, I've been considering maybe becoming a tradesman in that and building a career in that. And I'm like, dude, if you work hard, you can do very, very well. So I gave him my card and he was just so thankful. And it shouldn't matter, right? Should it? Like, doesn't really. The point of the story is like, I don't give a crap. It was a white dude, black dude, doesn't really matter to me. I'm like, the guy clearly needed help. That's all I saw. So now granted, some people are like, well, you just can't give a ride to anybody. And I said, true.
That's just true. Then you have
but I feel like I have a pretty good read on people.
Yes.
So the guy was just trying to get some help and he was on his way home, so.
And that's the thing. And I'm glad that you reached out to connect, but it's a beautiful story with that's one of the moments where biases could flare up, right? Whether you're good or bad. And then you're like, oh gosh, this guy's wearing this, he's this color. I've heard such a story. I don't want,
And he's from New York. So he had moved here. I picked up on his New York accent because you're up in New York. And I was like, you miss New York? He's like, how'd you realize that? I'm like, come on, man. Yeah, I could recognize a New York accent. It's not that hard. But it's like, he's like, I wanted to come here to better myself. He's like, the cost of living in New York, even in the boroughs, he's like, it's much higher. He'd been here like 5 years. And it's just, the annoying part is like, if somebody hadn't been as relaxed as me, if all of a sudden you see some guy just running up with some dreads, and stuff, like, people might not react the same way.
Yeah, they weren't. And that's there's a portion of the book I call about everybody needs to know the privilege. And it's possible to be privileged and oppressed at the same time. And so people get mad sometimes when you hear privilege, oh, it's white privilege or this. And it has nothing to do with the money. It's the fact that you have less things to think about. That guy, for example, probably had to think about, he's wearing this jumper, he's black, there's a lady there that might be uncomfortable around him, and he's staying longer than according to just her protest standards, something that's perceived as unsafe.
Yeah.
And so that's a thing where he would have to think extra. And then he will have to worry about, hey, I can't react angrily because I'm not only going to confirm the stereotype, but then it could escalate things. And that's an extra thought that happens all the time. And so when you have to do less of that, that's a privilege you have. Or same thing as me as a man, I can walk in the street safely past 9 p.m., right? 9 p.m. I can do that. And when I do a lot of masculinity workshops, a lot of women say, they have to worry about, getting heckled, being, they can't run in the park because they'll feel like that. They can't do it. And to me, it's, I walk all the time. I run there and all that. Or they take extra cabs and they take this and you don't do that. And those subtle things, those are the things that we also have to identify. What are our privileges and how can we use that as a superpower where we can make things less uncomfortable for other people? And it's just one of those things. But yeah, that was a beautiful moment there because I'm sure that guy was thinking about a lot of things. Sometimes what do you hear? I don't want any trouble. I don't want any trouble.
He probably was. Now you're bringing that up. I tried to make it as easy as possible because I just didn't care.
Yeah.
Now that you're talking about that, he probably had all kinds of things going through his mind.
He just don't want to be.
And that's a shame. That's a shame.
Yeah, it's a shame. But and then and it happens on all ends of the spectrum. And it's not, when people bring that privilege term, it's not to shame you. At least I don't do it to shame anyone. It's more just, hey, look, this is the reality for some people. It just happens. But then how do we make sure we work through those? It's not a bad thing if you have it. It's a bad thing if you have it, but it doesn't make you a bad person. But then we have to be honest, self-aware, and then say, okay, I'm going to normalize myself. I'm going to watch more. I'm going to learn more about the history. Make sure I humanize people. Yeah. I'm going to hang out with people that are different from me. I'm going to see how I can work through those experiences and not stay in my echo chamber, so that I can also be someone that can tell other people in my circle that, hey, that's not true at all. People always said that, but that's not true. This is my friend. This is that. So.
Well, so on this topic, the whole book launch thing and everything else, right? So, and I don't know if you knew this, but I'm actually finishing my first book too. So
hey,
yeah,
congratulations! It's a big year for you. Look at you, married.
I know,
Yeah.
right? I'm married. I'm increasing the public speaking thing. I'm trying to become an author like you. It was the same thing. I set the goal last year, and that was one of the underlying reasons why I launched the podcast. Because if and when I ever do write a book, I'll have my own platform to advertise on. So, hey, if no one else wants to buy my book, at least my listeners might. That's how I looked at it.
Let me know when it's out. I'll get it.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Well, it's going to talk a lot about in those 2 years spent as a wildland firefighter, the life lessons learned, even the lessons learned after that. I got to go back. I'm still doing the editing, so it's already done. I just have to edit it. So.
Oh wow.
But anyway, the point is that each of us have different goals to eventually launch a podcast or eventually write a book or get on stage and talk to people. So the purpose behind the book, is this in a perfect alignment with the podcast or anything else? Or was there a deeper dive purpose of this? You already hinted you set the goal and you wanted to get this done, but there's always like a big picture purpose behind a project. And I feel like my podcast is a little bit different than my purpose behind the book. So for you, the book, and we could tie this into your target audience, right? Like really how you're trying to impact and get the people. Can you connect us on all that?
Yes. My biggest goal is to impact the lives of 3 billion people. All right. There are 3 billion people under 30 right now. And that's those, I've identified them as the next set of global leaders. And I also want to be able to impact the institutions that affect us the most, which are education, family, and workplaces. And so the point of this book was me recognizing a problem, something that I've gone through. I think the world is at an identity crisis. It doesn't like to look in the mirror and admit what they've done, like to themselves, like this is who I am. Me being that skinny Nigerian kid, it was 10 years old, the skinny Nigerian kid with a thick Nigerian accent in a French-speaking country in an American international school going through puberty. Me having that experience and then going from there to coming back to my home country, Nigeria, and being perceived as not Nigerian enough. It's a reality for so many people.
Wow.
People that don't get to be themselves because the world doesn't allow them to be themselves. That's the actual problem in the world. People that don't get to express their gender identity. They don't get to express their orientation. They don't get to express, I consult with companies and the people that are Muslim don't want to wear hijabs in the office because they don't want to trigger someone. Or people that are gay don't want to put the couple photos in the photo because people are going to question them. People, when you work with people that strip down their identities, it's a problem. When you teach stories that only show one type of hero, kids tend to think that there's only one type of hero and they don't see themselves in all that. And so my thing was really, if I want to help inspire the next set of global leaders, I have to inspire both allies and people that are on the other end of the spectrum who feel like they're not enough. And so I want people that are allies, and I have privilege to say, hey, I'm going to do my best to make sure that there's a safe space for everyone. And I want people to feel like people on the other side of the spectrum to say, I'm enough, I matter, and I'm going to tell my story regardless. This is how I'm going to do it. And so that was what I was thinking. And my thinking is, if you have people that are all saying, I'm going to use my difference to make a difference, I'm celebrating it and I'm proud of that, we have a much better world. So it's a very long thing. I mean, I'm going to be doing this until I don't want to die, but if until that happens, but this is going to be something that will be keeping me up constantly. So that's the big picture.
That's why I asked you that question, because I knew it would be longer, because we're always honing our statements. We're always honing you want to call them taglines. I'm the marketing guy, right?
Yes, you are. You're
yeah, but it's like, I wanted you to dig deeper into that because it forces us into that position of, okay, how can I shorten that up? How can I grow that statement? But I didn't want it to be short. I wanted it to be longer because ever since I met you, one thing you've realized, because I'll be 42 this month. Where are you at right now?
I'm about to be 30.
There you go. All right. So you found your target audience, right?
Yeah.
Whereas like with this podcast, I'm a Gen Xer trying to get back to the millennials and beyond, right? I learned from a great mentor a while ago. They said, listen, you can claim to be the wisest person in the world. You acquire all this knowledge. You're constantly learning. But he's like, the true definition of wisdom is being able to pass it on. He's like, if you sit there and you're just soaking it up, you're a taker. He's like, you got to give. You got to give back. And he's like, the sooner you can figure out who you're trying to target, who you're trying to impact, who you're trying to help create change with, he's like, that's going to get you closer. And this is where I'm going with all this, to your legacy. all the crap we're doing in this world, all the lifestyle changes, the sports I do, the podcasting, the author, you writing a book, your podcast, why are we doing it all? Right? So big picture with you, since I met you, was this guy, whether he's using it or not, is building one hell of a legacy. Right?
Oh, wow. Wow. Oh my gosh. Thank you.
You ever thought about that?
No, I think about legacy all the time, but I didn't realize you thought that about me. So that's humbling. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Well, because we all need to hear this crap a little bit more in life. I mean, you're busting your butt. You're about to take, I'm hoping, a lot of positive energy from launching a book, but there's going to be those couple of haters and trollers out there that start trying to backlash you. Yeah. But it's like that. I think we all need to get a little positive love once in a while. And that's one thing that when I saw the book, I was like, oh man, I got to get back on the podcast. I mean, besides the fact I wanted to hang out and talk to you anyway. But I was like, man, this guy is building a legacy. And you need to hear those words.
Thank you. I mean, sometimes you're right. It's really hard for someone like me. One of the things I'm working on, which is why I've taken on meditation very seriously, is being present. I'm just go. And I don't know why I'm so effective at what you said. It's just like, I didn't pause. I guess it's such a...
Sorry, man, live in the moment.
Yeah, no, wow. Oh my goodness. But I want to go back to what you said earlier. I believe life is about, who you are and who you want to be, the journey to life, right? And a lot of life is about figuring out if who you are now can match who you want to be. And that's essentially what the life is about. You're throughout the journey, you're trying to always say who you want to be. How many times have you heard people, when I was a kid or when I was younger, I always wanted to do something, but then along the way, whatever, I changed all that. Mm-hmm. But if we stay committed to trying to reach that person that we want to be, you're inevitably going to have a growth mindset, because whether you detour, whether you fall down, whether you hit the high 85 through a smooth ride, you're going to learn so many things about yourself. And you're going to pick up so many passengers along the way. And then they're going to hop on your ride, which is going to be a legacy. And they're going to want to do what you're doing. And then you're going to find partners that want to do something with you. And then you're going to expand that. Mm-hmm. But if we lose sight of that, when we're not being self-aware, and we don't think of the way we want a legacy to be, we become the worst versions of ourselves.
True.
Yeah.
And normally I ask my guest co-host to leave behind some all-encompassing, all-powerful final words. And as usual, you over-deliver. As we're approaching the end of the show. I couldn't have asked you to plan that. Anyway.
Oh, wow. Wow. I didn't realize. Sorry.
You could drop the proverbial mic on that one. Well said. Well said. Yes, and now I don't have to ask you to do this. So yeah, those are powerful final words. And yes, I think each of you, myself, other people that we're all connected with, I truly believe, I've said this before on this show, I know you brought it up, there's all these old school influencers out there, which even though they're old school, they're new school, because what we're finding is that knowledge, ergo the wisdom, continues to get shared throughout time. It just morphs. It just changes in word choices, verbal alignment, how a sentence is structured. But like the classic quote from like Jim Rohn. So if you want to call it the 5 people, the sum, the quantity, the addition, whatever. The point is this, as you just hinted at, as you continue down this path along this timeline, you have a choice of who you're attracting, who you're surrounding yourself with. And part of that growth mindset is once you start really embracing this, digging deeper, maybe experimenting with meditation like you hinted at, is you're going to start attracting growth-oriented people. And those growth-oriented people will help you with your goals, and you'll be able to help them with their goals. And then everybody's growing together. And that's one thing that I could wish for everybody is like, as soon as you can get out of that negative mindset, find the positive energy, because we're still going to get beat up day in and day out. Let's be real. But when you got that tribe around you, man, that energy that you get to hold each other accountable to and keep that positive growth on alignment, that's exciting. That's the right kind of people. I mean, it doesn't have to be physically in person. Like you and I right now, I'm getting done with this podcast and I'm high as a kite right now. Like this is.
Oh my goodness, that's awesome. I feel the same way. Same way. Energetic, and it's that vibration. I think understanding the connection. Maybe in the old age times, 50 years ago, connection across digital mediums would never have been perceived. But you can feel the high that you said, and I can feel the same high over this. And we need to strive for those type of connections. Don't be limited by your environment. Say, well, I'm not physically there. You can still find a way to connect and get something good. So,
And again, people hearing this, like, you don't have to launch a podcast show like Teo and I have done. You don't have to go on each other's podcast shows like Teo and I continue to do. You don't have to write books like apparently now Teo and I are doing.
Yeah, I mean, we're just continue.
Super cool. The point is like, it could just be simply sitting down in a hotel lobby room with somebody you just met and having a healthy conversation and just seeing where it goes, right? Just to bring that full circle, because I love that.
Yeah, and I love the poetry in that. That's exactly how we met.
Yeah,
and that's how we're ending it here.
Yeah.
I think if we create a world of people who are more themselves and we commit to being ourselves, we're in a much better place. It's such a simple statement to make, but how many people are truly themselves, and how many people allow other people to be themselves?
Actually, those are some more great final words. That's a nice short one.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I got my VA at the very end here. We got to use that because I want to put that as a quote in your blog content when we air this show.
Thank you.
So well said, sir.
Thank you so much.
Well said. And again, congrats on the book. I'm going to do one last final share as we close the show out for the screen sharing. Because, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't watched the live feed on Facebook or you just want to find the book easily, when you go to livethefuel.com, I have an Amazon banner. It goes directly to my Amazon influencer page. So I have a whole chapter here called Scott's Book Recommendations. So all the authors I bring on this show or the books I find powerful and influential are here. And now Teo's book is right there.
This is bestseller? What?
You're ranking as a bestseller right now.
What?
So
that's news to me.
You might want to check your data, my friend.
What?
You're seeing it here first. Yeah. I don't know. You were listed as a best. When did you turn this on?
Wait, but I mean,
well, you're a #1 release in business communication.
Well, wait, what?
Right here. So you might want to. All right. So all right, we're going to shut this podcast down because you got some sharing to do. Okay.
I might need your screenshot of that bestseller because what the screenshot
back here?
Wow.
Hold on. Let me go back to the prior page.
Where it says best. What? Sorry, audience. Sorry, audience. I'm just
Take your phone because I'm screen sharing. Do you have this on your screen? Grab a snap of that.
Let me
because do you see that guy right in the middle? Keto. That's the Keto Guido. That guy's from Jersey Shore. So
yeah, I do know. I know Vinny.
Yeah, he's got Vinny's got 500 million followers on Instagram, and he just launched his cookbook. So he's best selling. Dude, Strengths Finder 2.0 has been out forever. He's best selling. Well, now you're best selling, my friend. Look at that.
Oh my gosh.
There you go.
Oh my gosh.
All right.
Sorry. This is like I don't know what to do with myself.
I'm gonna leave this screen up for myself because if you don't post it up there, I'm slapping that up on Instagram.
Okay. Thank you. Wow. Sorry, I know you were ending the podcast.
Ending the show on a whole lot of positive energy.
Yeah.
Well done, sir. Well done.
Thank you.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, that's been another powerful Live the Fuel podcast show. And I like to timestamp once in a while. So on Labor Day 2019, Monday, September 2nd, you heard it here first, Teo Rockson's new book, Use Your Difference to Make a Difference, is already ranking as a bestseller. So as I hinted, go to my website, find your way to the Amazon influencer page, or just go search on your own. But let's support the mission here. Get some new reading, people. All right? So again, we're here to fuel your health, your business, and your lifestyle. You too can live the fuel. And we'll talk to you guys again soon.